as Sally Gatto talks about in her writing about frailty and strength, basically the rationalist metaphysics have the spirit separate from the body. The idea is that the spirit is this pure, enduring thing, and the body is temporary, and that's how that's understood. And so by having this separation, and basically thinking that what you are inside is the same for as long as you live and possibly onward, and the body is something that's decaying, it can create this sort of self-loathing, and also loathing of others, which I don't think is helpful. Gatto thinks that actually one better way of thinking about it and correcting this thinking is to take a positive existentialist view. So that might seem a little strange, but basically what she thinks about is that the body is an example, the decaying body is an example of frailty, but frailty is something that is faced all throughout our lives. And so being able to experience frailty in this way, and of course not every older person is frail, but continue experiencing frailty in this specific way is an example, in a clearer way, an insight into the frailty that is experienced by people throughout their lives in a plethora of different ways. Gatto also goes on to say, going back to the dualism, that frailty and energy are seen as two things that are opposite of each other, whereas to experience frailty in a really emotional and powerful way is a form of energy in itself. And also, of course, you can experience all sorts of energy while being frail in other ways. She actually quotes Scott Maxwell and says that it is the possibility that all intense experience is an increase of energy. And then she says, frailty, then, is not simply the antithesis of energy. It is itself an intense experience and brings with it new life. So I think that's one thing that's important in countering ageism, is seeing age as another step in life, another stage. In the article Towards the Philosophy of the Third Age, scholars Charles J. Fahey and Martha Holstein talk about identifying old age, as they define as the late 60s or early 70s and onward, as a third stage of life. Like the other ages, adolescence and adulthood, they identify the third age as an important stage in the lives of humans. They identify that because of the relationship of frailty that someone develops in their third age of their life, this is an extremely good chance for self-reflection and what they call just being. One thing that is intrinsic in ageism is the idea that in order to be culturally accepted in old age and to reach goodness in the eyes of society, people must subscribe to the cult of youth even when they're old. So that's the elderly being defied by the young who's ruling the country. And so by having someone not your own age define what your life should be, basically they get caught up in what is called the cult of busyness. So the idea that an indication of how well someone is functioning is dependent on how many activities they do. And this is something you see everywhere and something I often catch myself doing, which is harmful. And the idea is that it's not good enough to have a time of self-reflection, that productivity, and of course that's something from the industrial era, productivity is the marker of success. And what scholars see now is that's not correct, that there is no less value in taking a time of reflection than of productivity. So how does ageism affect the lives of the elderly today? Well, one obvious way is that elderly are often seen as incompetent. And this is because of the stereotype that elderly are slow, and the stereotype that the elderly are incompetent. And this, first of all, is a result of the fact that the elderly are basically grouped together. They're seen as a group, not individuals, and they all have characteristics, and that is something that is seen in all types of discrimination. It is no different in ageism. And so one result of that is that older people, when trying to continue working, are often not likely to get jobs, and they're often laid off at a certain age because it's seen that they will be incompetent because their work is undervalued because they're slow or because people think they'll be slow. Another result of the elderly being seen as incompetent or not all with it is that the elderly are often not taken seriously. And this can have horrible consequences. First of all, in the medical room, this can be a terrible thing where the elderly are basically supposed to sit there and be told by their doctors what they should do. And often this can cause misdiagnosis because they aren't really given a voice in their healthcare. Also, especially this can be harmful in cases of elder abuse. So often, people who are being abused in a physical manner, because they're all different forms of elder abuse, elders who have been physically abused will go to the doctor and not be asked about their bruises because doctors will assume that they've fallen because it's a stereotype of the elderly that because their bodies are degrading, that they will fall all the time. And often, if this isn't something that's actively put as a priority and that people really rally for, that elder abuse will go unnoticed because unless it's brought up, it's something that's not really going to be presumed. And a lot of the invisibility of the old also contributes to elder abuse. So because the elders are seen as separate from society, they are not always integrated in that way, because a lot of times their only contact them will be with caregivers and family who go visit them because they have a lack of mobility. Elder abuse can go unnoticed for quite a long amount of time, and they can be extorted monetarily, they can be harmed physically. Another thing that can prevent elderly people from getting the care they really need is the fact that people count on kindness. So the idea that how you're taken care of in old age now is a lot of times thought to be a direct result of how you've treated other people in your lifetime. So say you have children or other relatives who take care of you, and you feel that's because of a relationship you have. And that's nice, but however, it can be really hard for elderly people to really advocate and get what they really want. Not just need, but want. Because people feel they have this relationship, but if they ask too much, they might not get anything at all, and they might be abandoned, or they might harm that relationship. So a lot of times what you'll hear if you talk to people, maybe in nursing homes, is people will talk to you and say, oh, well, my son's very busy, or, they're all very busy. So this idea that you are a second thought, that people are too busy for you, and you don't want to go up against it. And that's a result of internalized ageism, I think, where you basically are told to pack your life in tiny boxes, but at the same time, you're supposed to be vivacious, or you're not really seen as a fully together individual. Going back to the cult of busyness, I think one reason why people also feel that pressure and internalize is that, if you're not doing all the things you used to do, that's a sign that you can't take care of yourself anymore. And that's a real thing. People think that a lot, and so if you're someone who wants to remain independent, you can often feel the pressure that you need to be involved, whether or not you may or not want to, because that's seen as what you should be doing at that age. Now, I think I could obviously go on for much longer about the topic of ageism, and there's so much that's been written about it and so much to talk about and so many issues we still face today, but I think I'm going to stop there. This is just an introduction to the topic of ageism. I'll link down below a few different books on the topic in the description that I've talked about here and different articles so that you can check them out and read more. And obviously that's where I got my information from. So also, if you liked this video, click like down below, and if you want more information about the elderly, don't forget to click subscribe and comment if you have something to say or if you have a request for a video. So thank you.